So first and foremost, startups have been around for 3 decades, more than 3 decades. 1990 was the boom time when the, what so-called dot-com, when the internet started 1996. 2000 was actually the, peak of the dot-com boom. And from then till now, 20, 30 more years since then, these startup failure rates have not come down. Although as a community we have all learned what it takes to do startups, but the number of startups that fail continues to be high, right? And this is the graph that shows you how many startups fail. So roughly, if you take the year 0 as 100 startups started, 2 startups fail in the first year, 23 next year, and so on and so forth. Eventually, after 15 years or so, roughly, 17. So the 83% startups don't survive, right? And even after that, the last line there here, what it says is that a lot of startups are not able to come up with a measurable, consistent way of making money. And as a result, they are not able to consistently make profits. And therefore, their long-term survival is debatable even in the long term. I still don't have the clicker, but let me do this. So what the next question is, it works.
I just asked them to reduce the noise outside.
Sure, sounds good. Thank you. Okay, so then the question becomes: so why do startups fail, right? And lots of people have looked at it. This data is from a company called CB Insight, which basically which talked to 100+ startups which had failed, and asked the founders of those startups the reasons, what they thought their startup was not able to succeed, right? So that's the numbers given by the entrepreneurs themselves. So it's not an external number. So as you can see, the largest cause for failure is what they call no market need, right? No market need basically means that the startups were not able to figure out or were not able to build products that were needed by the market, right? So therefore, no one was willing to use the product, which actually is the biggest problem with all startups. You build products, you spend 2-3 years building good product, what you think is a good product, but then you launch in the market and no one really wants to use it, right? So that's the biggest problem, 42%. After that comes the thing which is that you don't have money to continue running your startup. That's number 2. Number 3, that founding team that comes together to make this happen was not the right team, right? So that's the number 3. We talked about last time that the key skills needed are basically user skills. You need to understand who your users are. Number 2, ability to build the right product. So those are technology skills. Number 3, ability to run the business, which is to make money, which is sales and marketing, right? So that's number 3. Number 4, for a lot of deep tech startups, which have both the hardware component and the software component, the number 4 skill needed is operating, ability to run the operations. So you need to be able to manage your supply chain, you need to, procure the ingredients, and then obviously on the other side have the distribution network setup. So that's the ops, COO kind of a job. So those are 4 key roles. So that's the team. The number 4 is getting out-competed. Someone else can build better products. And last one is pricing and cost issues, right? So when we map it to what really can you do, right? So these are the reasons why companies fail, startups fail. Then the question becomes, okay, what can you do as early stage, as founders, actually not just early stage employees, but as the core people, what can you do? So for no market need, you really need to want to understand, are there users who will use your product, right? The products that you want to build, will there be users in the market? Running out the cash is basically about, can you raise enough capital? And of course, equally importantly, can you manage your cash flow? When you sell products to customers, they don't always pay you on the same day. There are some payment terms. So or actually even before that, when you build product, you have to procure the parts. It takes, let's say, 2 months to build the product, then a month to sell it. Those 90 days is when you have already spent the money, but you're waiting for money to come back. That's the cash flow. So you have to manage the cash flow. Next one is you have to have a well-formed team. We'll talk more about that. And this one, like I said last time also, getting out-competed is not that bad. I think, it's actually good. It's okay to get out-competed. Obviously, we should ask ourselves, what can we do to stay ahead of the competitors, right? And the last one is business model, which actually gets a lot of attention in the market. But I think we will talk about this. The other four are actually equally or more important, as you can see from the numbers, right? So that's what we are, right? Then therefore comes the question, so what do you do, right? So this, if there are so many causes of failures, what can you do to succeed, right? And this is what I tweaked the Leo Tolstoy quote, saying that although, I think, although the startups can fail for hundreds of reasons, but if you start looking at the startups that succeed, a few patterns emerge, few common things that all successful startups do. And that's what we want to find out, right? Because that makes it easier for us to say, okay, if we do these things, probability of success will go up. Therefore, the possibility of failure, the 83% failure, can be brought down, right? That's basically the core thing, that if we can do it well, then the effort that you guys will put in is actually going to pay rewards at the end, right? So that's the thing. The three things that are needed, necessary, based on the data, right? And if you go back to the previous slide, see the colors, there are four things which are in blue color, capital in green, and team in orange. If you go to if we look at the key pillars of success, these are the same pillars, right? We need to figure out, how can you build team? I put team first because team is the one that makes it happen. That's the most important thing. After that comes the strategy, which is how are you going to build the product, how are you going to raise the money, how are you going to sell it to the customers. Actually, even before that, how will you understand what people want, what customers want, how will you build products, how will you sell, and how will you make the business work. That's the strategy. Last is capital, which is how will you raise capital, how will you get money from investors, from angel investors, from grants, whichever form of money. We don't care about at this time. We'll talk about it more as we go along, right? So that's the thing. So that's what we want to talk about. So there are three things that I'm going to focus for the next few lectures. And these are all going to be strategy, right? Then we'll come to the team, and then finally to the capital. That's roughly the structure. So the strategy has three parts. First part is, who are your users, which I call it user model. Second, what products are you going to build, which I call value model. And third, how are you going to make money, which everyone calls business model, right? So there are three different models. And these are, user model corresponds to customers. There's a difference between term user and customer. I will use them interchangeably. But if you really, really want to be strict about it, users are the customers who don't necessarily pay you for it, right? So they use your product, but they don't pay for it. Customers are the people who pay for it, right? This is more applicable for online products, right? So if you, let's say, go to Google Maps, all of us will be using Google Maps, but no one pays for it, right? So who pays for Google Maps? Does anyone know who pays for Google Maps? How does Google make money, or do they make losses? Sorry? No, ads are not the way to make money. Yeah, exactly. So the people who pay to Google Maps are the logistics companies, including Ola and Uber. Actually, Ola doesn't pay now. Ola actually moved out of Google Maps because the amount of money that they were paying was in tens of millions of dollars, right, annually, right? And that's the reason why Ola decided that this is not a good strategy. They moved to, actually they have, if I'm not wrong, they have homegrown solution, or maybe they may move to Map My India. Map My India is one of the oldest mapping company in India, started in 1999. The guys are husband-wife pair, good story. So that's the difference between user and customer. User are all the people who may or may not pay. Customers are people who pay. But I'll use the term interchangeably because in deep tech startups, there are very few users. Mostly everyone pays for it, right? You might have, in the beginning, you might have a few customers who might not pay for it because of some reasons. We'll talk about the reasons, right? Value model products, like I said, and then last is business model. So let's talk about business model because that's one thing that everyone understands. So if you are a startup enthusiast, if you start reading about startups, internet, you search about startups, the first thing that you'll see is business model, right? Everyone talks about it. So let's start from there, right? Because that's most understood. So first and foremost, why are you doing a startup, right? The reason to do a startup is you're creating value so that there is ROIC. ROIC is return on invested capital, right? This capital can be capital that is invested by someone else, which are investors, or it is the capital that you yourself invest, which is your time and money, because there's an opportunity cost. You're losing a few years to build a startup, right? So that's the qualitative investment. But when we talk about ROIC, normally look at quantitative, which is how much money was invested, which is at the bottom. Chalta hai kya? No, okay. So investment, that's the money that's been put in, and on the top is return, which is, let's say you go and raise capital at 100 rupees. After 2 years, it becomes 500 rupees. So the delta, right, is 500 minus 100, which is 400. 400 by 100 becomes 4x becomes your return, right? So that's the ROIC. Now ROIC depends on the, like I said, implicitly valuation of the company. How much is your startup valued at, right? So, and the valuation of a company depends on the revenue of the company. That's not true on the day one when you are going to, not day one, but when you go to raise initial amounts of money from your angel investors or from your grant seed investment. At that time, there is no revenue, so the investment that you get is on potential of the team and potential of the idea, right? But there is a revenue eventually, right? In fact, after some time, revenue is also not important. What's important is profit, right? So that's what is more important. So eventually, when you look at Swiggy, which went IPO around a month back, they're not yet profitable, right? But they have revenues. Revenues are, there's a clear path of revenue and there's a clear path of cost. And investors can see that at some point in near future, the revenues will cross the cost and therefore it will become a profitable company, right? And that's why people buy into a share of a Swiggy. They also look at the industry. They look at Zomato, a larger company, it's already profitable. So therefore they are able to say, okay, eventually Swiggy should also be able to make profits. Their revenue should be more than the cost, therefore it's worth the investments, right? So that's roughly speaking how, this is all math, and which is why this is so well understood by everyone, right? Now the cost, and which is what Swiggy right now tells its investors, that yes, we are not yet profitable, but look at our cost. We have some fixed costs, which are the cost of the people, which is cost of developers and engineers and all other marketing people, operations people, and everyone. That's your fixed cost, right? Then there's a variable cost, right? What is a variable cost? Variable cost is basically any cost that is needed to deliver value to customer, right? In Swiggy's case, the variable cost is the cost that it takes them to pick up the food from the restaurant and deliver it to you. So it's the cost of what's called a delivery cost, right? So they have to just pay the delivery partner some money, roughly 30, 50 rupees, to take the food from the restaurant and deliver to your home, right? So that's a delivery cost. So that's a variable cost because it changes. If there are 100 orders, then they pay 100 into 30 rupees, 3,000. If there are 200 orders, then they obviously are 6,000, right? So it basically depends on the volume, but the fixed cost doesn't change. The product that you have built is what you have built, and that's why it's called fixed cost, right? So we need to basically understand that. That's what we'll talk about this as we go along. But right now, let's look at the revenue, because revenue is the top line. Revenue is what drives, it is the oxygen that feeds the startup, right? So now revenue equation, normally you will not find this on internet, but one way to look at revenue is number of users that you acquire, and it's true for both software companies like Swiggy as well as hardware companies or deep tech companies that hopefully all of you are thinking about, right? So it's the number of users, which is number of customers, number of paying customers, right, into units per user, which is how many boxes, so to say, have they bought. So if you're building a drone and you're selling like IdeaForge, if they're building drones, how many drones are being bought by each individual customer. So let's say they have 100 customers and each customer is buying 5 drones, so that's 100 into 5. And the last one is price per unit. How much are they selling that drone for, right? So that's the price per unit. So that's the equation, roughly speaking, that gives you a sense of what you need to do to generate revenue. This is very, very easy for software business, software, what's it called, SaaS companies, like software as service companies, right? The units per user, so let's say if you were to use, we are using Zoom right now for this broadcast, right? So for the ARTPARK people. Now Zoom basically right now doesn't charge you on per usage, but let's say they were charging, if you do up to 100 meetings in a month, then you pay me 1,000 rupees. But if you do, between 1,000 or whatever, 100 to 500 meetings, then you pay me more, right? So that's price per usage. So units can become usage also. So it can become, actually maybe easier example, let's say Ola and Uber example, right? So number of users is, let's say half of you use Ola. Units per user is, in that case, number of rides you take per month, right? So if you take 5 rides per month, that's your 5, and price per unit is what's the price you pay them for that ride. So let's say 500 rupees. So that will become your price per unit, right? So that's the 3 levers, 3 knobs that as a company you can play with, right? So next part is, the number of users becomes a very important criteria. We have to understand who are these users, right? For Ola, Uber, Zoom, things which we now know because they have scaled up, it's easy to visualize. But when you're thinking of a new product, you're thinking of something that you think, you can introduce the market, that becomes a very, very important thing. Who are you going to introduce this product to? I will use an example in 2 slides so that you can visualize and understand that more, right? Because this is important because of 2 reasons. Number of users, how many customers are there depends on this, and how much are they going to buy from you also depends on that, right? So who are your target customers? Very, very important, right? It is important, which is why, this next most important or most popular topic on internet is user model, right? And what they do, what you will find everywhere is that number of users that are out there are, can be many, right? So if you're building a drone, let's say Idea Forge again, you could be selling it to government, you could be selling it to armed forces, you could be selling it to commercial entities. Now, commercial entities themselves can be of many types. They could be in oil and gas, they could be in infrastructure, they could be in real estate and so on and so forth, right? They can be marriages. Apparently, that was initially thought to be a big use case. People want good videos for their marriages, right? So that's there's this crowd of people, and you need to understand who out of that is what you want to go after initially. You can't go after everyone, right? I think, by the way, like I said last time, if anyone has any questions, please ask as and when it comes. And that's applicable to people listening in on Zoom as well. So I don't know how we will do that. Is there a way to track anyone asking questions?
Mahadev, need to check if somebody has posted anything.
If anyone posts a question, just let me know. If they do, let them know they can ask questions. I mean, I'm sure they can hear me. Yeah. Okay. If not, then the whole point of this is lost. Yes, please.
So in terms of revenue,
Yeah.
you're pricing your product.
Yeah.
Like in the case of Swiggy, you said it's a delivery thing, so
Yeah.
everything's a variable cost.
Yes.
And how would you choose between kind of replicating your cost to the price that the model similarity, like it's a usage based, or you absorb that cost into a subscription based? Like how do you go about deciding whether you take?
That's all about, that's exactly why business models are so important. So I think there are many options available, and there is no exact answer to that. It will depend on what you think will give you a competitive advantage, right? So Swiggy's example itself, Swiggy realized that if it were to introduce a subscription like you mentioned, Swiggy One, then it might give some benefits, right? So when Swiggy One was being worked upon, right? The reason actually I know a little bit about Swiggy is because I was with Axel Partners, which invested in Swiggy, and I worked with Swiggy team very, very closely in the beginning, right? So in the beginning, when the Swiggy was thinking about subscription, they actually did a user research. They talked to the customers and they asked them, would you want to sign up for a subscription, right? And a lot of customers said, yes, we would, only if, or it was not stated as only if, but as a pain point that came out very, very clearly was everyone hated the surge charges, the extra, right? If you order food at 7 p.m. when it's raining, then suddenly it says delivery charge is 100 rupees, right? Or our delivery partners are busy, and the extra payment is this much. So a lot of people said that if the surge charge can be removed, then we are willing to pay you a subscription fee. So that's what Swiggy did when they launched. It was called Swiggy Super in the beginning. Now it's called One. But when they launched Swiggy Super, then they eliminated the surge charges, right? So, but the side effect of that was which is how the human psyche is. Once you have paid someone 100 rupees, even small amount like 100 rupees, then you get into this value for money. कि इसका वसूली हुआ कि नहीं, right? So you want to make sure you order twice at least, so that your 100 rupees that you're paying, you recover from them. So that's what they also saw. After it launched, people who actually signed up for subscription, their usage started going up, right? So yes, it is not exact science. This is where I think we'll talk about business models and different elements of business model. It is very important. It is actually, it comes out of the founding team. So it depends on what kind of company you want to build, right? So there are different kinds of companies. I think maybe I'll talk this time, if not this time, next time. And we'll have to look at that. So there are premium companies or mass market companies. So we have to look at what kind of company you want to build. So it depends on that also. So the business model is a very interesting, very detailed topic. We'll definitely cover it later. Right?
Next question. It will help if questions asked in the classroom. Can they repeat the question?
Okay, it's a meta question. Okay, we will repeat the question. Sure.
Sir, I have a doubt.
Yeah.
Let's assume I am starting something new.
Yeah.
And that is a new technology.
Yeah.
Why don't generally to reduce the market competency, why don't we go for the patent or copyright so that competition gets eliminated and we are the only one who can benefit?
Okay. And okay, so to follow that, so the question is, can you use patents or other IP mechanisms to reduce competition in the market, right? Answer is typically no, because you might come up with a good product with following one certain process, right? But someone else can see that you have a good product. Without talking to you, they can reverse engineer, if not reverse engineer, they can also build a product in a different way, right? Therefore, IP, whenever, if it is very unique IP, like Google did PageRank, it gives you it definitely gives you what's the right word? It allows you to, it allows you to, be ahead of others, but your competitive advantage doesn't last forever, right? So patents are good defensive strategies, right? So if you become large, then you get the opportunity to stop others from copying you. But when you yourself are small and there are others who are equally small, then even if there's small difference in the way they are building the product is enough for them to defend against your copyright infringement case if at all you were to file on them. So patents are useful, they have the place. They are very, very useful in medical space, right? So if you have a new drug, new molecule, definitely that can be protected. But in the software space, very difficult to protect. In the deep tech space, little bit easier, better. But I would not rely too much or only on that, right? So.
Because I heard a story about Amazon that they patented something called one-click payment or one-click order for 10 years.
Yes.
So that they can get the competitive advantage.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So again, to repeat, so Amazon patented one click and did it give them advantage? Yes, it did, right? But the question to ask is, did it stop others? Did eBay not succeed because of that? Answer is no. eBay became very successful, very large company. So I think it's a good defensive strategy, but I would not recommend that's the. In fact, if you file a patent, then some information gets leaked, right? Because that's a public information. So a lot of companies actually don't file a patent for really core things that they have, unless they come to a point where they see others might also be, patenting it. So they then file it so that others they get the prior, I think it's called provisional date or whatever. So earlier date gets priority. So they do it sometimes that way. So patents are not always the way to defend the market, right? So. All right, there was one more question I thought, no? All right, okay, so this is, the question then becomes, okay, there are so many users, so many potential users, customers on the market, what do we do with that, right? What typically you do is you segment them, you break them into smaller chunks, right? And what typically you do is you look at various attributes of the users, right? So if you're a deep tech company, not all of these will matter, but some of these might matter, right? What is the usage, what are the, right? So, if you look at these are all qualitative ways of figuring it out, right? And what we want to do is to move away from the qualitative bits of doing building startups and be a little more quantitative, be a little more mathematical, be a little more scientific, right? So that's basically the hope. So to do that, we need to look at take a slightly different perspective. And the different perspective, I think all the people here would know this, is the systems engineering perspective, where you treat the what you're building, in this case the user itself, as the black box. And you say, this black box, what happens inside that, I don't know, I don't care. What I care is, what is the input into the system, what's the output into the system. Of course, there's a feedback loop, there's, the user, any system interacts with its environment also. So those are important, right? So they can't deny that. But we can simplify our life by looking at the outputs and inputs, right? That's basically, so if you look at that, first thing, and I think this everyone agrees and knows that, right? That users seek value. When you look at yourself as a customer of any products that you use, right? You are always seeking value. Now, seeking value is of two things. Either you are trying to reduce the effort that it takes for you to do the job, or you're trying to see, can I get a better value? Can I get more benefits from it, right? So either you're saying, is the cab going to come to my pickup location or not, or do I need to walk to the D gate? So there's the effort part of it, right? That's what will make you choose between, let's say, a cab and a bus, right? So there's one gives you lower effort, one requires slightly more effort. Second is the result. Are you going to get better result out of it, right? So that's where you will compare, saying, between Namayatri and Ola and Uber, which one is going to give me better results, right? So that can depend on, will it come on time? Will the person cancel it? And 100 other parameters that you will have in your head, right? So those are your parameters that you might use to get better results. So there's an effort angle and there's a result angle, right? So that's basically two parts. So roughly speaking, they can correspond to what's the output of the system and what's the input into the system. What are you putting in and what are you getting out, right? That's where, we all always, know this value for money. Are you getting enough for the money that you're investing in it, right? So that's basically what it all boils down to. Now, if you look at human beings, us, as our customers, the outputs correspond to expectations. What do you expect from the product, right? How it, as your, expectations can be in terms of performance. Will the taxi come on time? Or it can be in terms of the qualitative part of it, which is, let's say, a better cab comes to you, or actually even price can be a, output expectation. The requirement is on the input side, which is, that's where it becomes a little confusing. Perhaps the cost is on the input side, how much I am putting in. Am I paying, for between a XL and normal cab, sedan and XL, what's my input into the system? And am I getting the corresponding output out, right? So that's basically expectations, requirements. Right? Now, this is where it, to make it quantitative, we need to basically figure out proxies for this, right? And I'll tell you in the next slide with example why these two statements that I'm going to make are correct. One, for consumer activities, the output is proportional to importance, input is proportional to frequency, right? For business activities, those two don't hold, but output is is proportional to revenue proximity and input to expenses incurred. Wait for 2 more seconds, I'll tell you why. But the last bit here is we need to quantify the last value model also, which is the products that we are going to build, right? And the same output-input equation holds for it. For products, again the same, treat product as a system, look only at the input and output, because the product has too much complexity, we don't want to get into that, right? We want to model it and keep our life simple. So this is what it becomes, right? What is the performance that you're getting, which is the output, right? And what you're putting into the system, which can be effort and the money, right? So those are the two inputs into the system, right? And this then corresponds to quantify it into wallet share and the usage share, right? So that's the assertion. Stay with it. Believe it or don't believe it, but hold off your questions for a few more minutes. Then I'll try to answer these, right? So to answer this, before I answer this, I want to introduce a logical way of building startups, because we can't use equations to build startups, right? That's like, okay, it's good to have a theoretical foundation, but really, what do we do, right? So for that, And the fourth most important question, how do we pick the right problem to solve? We have to then ask, okay, what do we do? Does anyone recognize this quote? Do you know who said this? Who's this Barksdale guy? Right. What does it says? There are only two ways to make money in the market. One is to unbundle, second is to bundle, or other way around. No one remembers, no one knows. Okay, this is at the height of .com boom, when Netscape was trying to fight with Microsoft's Internet Explorer. Right, so these are 96, 97, that time frame. 93, 94, Anderson was a PhD student at UIUC, if I'm not wrong. And he partnered with Jim Barksdale, who became the CEO of the company, and Mark Andreessen was the CTO. And together they built a company called Netscape, right, which basically was the front runner for all the internet companies. That's where the browser came, right? So when he was trying to do IPO and trying to convince people that they should invest in Netscape, someone asked him a question, and off the cuff he responded like this, right? So, but we'll look into this a little bit more, right? To ask you that, I think I'll ask you this question. Does anyone recognize this? Indigo. 6E Indigo, yeah. Yeah. So what has Indigo done? How have they changed compared to, let's say, Air India? Sorry? Sorry? Unbundle the drink. So what has Indigo done is really unbundled. So in the beginning, which is before Deccan Airways was the first company which did this, but before Deccan, Jet Airways, Air India, I don't know who else was there at that time, they all had priced, the ticket price included food, included seats, included everything, right? And the smart people said, okay, not everyone travels with, two big suitcases. Not everyone wants food. So why should people who don't travel with heavy suitcases subsidize those who travel with suitcases, right? So that's one question. Why should people who don't want to eat subsidize those who want to eat, right? So those are good. So unbundling is a very, very powerful strategy by which you can, give more value to targeted customers, right? So that's basically what they did. They unbundled everything. Even to now have luggage, sometimes you have to pay for it, right? So there's a light fare in which only the handbag is allowed, right? So that's what they did. Eventually, I think if you go international flights, Indigo, I think, charges even for the blankets and other things. So it's sad, but that's how it is. Yes?
Sir, by unbundling, the economies of scale reduces, right? How do profitability, it affects the profitability.
Yes.
How they are making money by unbundling this?
So the question is, does unbundling reduce the economies of scale, and therefore how does it impact the profitability of the company? So the answer to that question is, it doesn't always. Economies of scale is, so you have to ask yourself, are you underserving or overserving or right serving the customers? So if on a 1 hour flight from here to Chennai, you are somehow giving a coffee and something to eat, while most people don't care because it's actually, by the time you reach, they start descending. So you really don't have time to eat. So most people just stuff it in the bag. So actually, some actually eat and they thank the airlines for giving them the food. But the question is, how many are getting underserved and overserved? So if most people don't want the food, then those people are subsidizing the people who want the food, right? Now, economy of scale is actually how many people are traveling, right? So you have to ask, what is the core product of airlines? Core product of airlines is to take you from place A to place B. It is not to serve you food. So therefore, that is what you have to ask the question when you have to answer the question of what is the economies of scale. So if something impacts the number of people traveling, then that will reduce the economies of scale. These are overheads, and by reducing it, they can actually increase their profitability. In fact, there's a good case study. I think it's Southwestern Airlines in the US. It is, I don't know whether it's true or not, but they said they removed one jalapeno pickle, that round thing, that one per sandwich, and they saved like tens of millions of dollars. Because every time the plane takes off, the load of the plane, it defines how much fuel they burn. So by reducing the weight, they are able to increase the the efficiency. So it's a complicated place to be. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
What's economies of scale?
Okay, question is what's economies of scale? Economies of scale is as you grow bigger, the larger size gives you certain benefits. So example of that is if you were to buy, let's say, a single, stick with single can of Coke, you might have to pay 10 rupees. If you buy a dozen, then the company will say you can buy it for 100 rupees. Right? So you are basically benefiting, you're saving 20 rupees by buying in bulk. So whenever you are buying in bulk, you can actually reduce the cost as a buyer. As a builder, as a company that's building the products, let's say you're building IdeaForge gets an order saying, I want 1,000 drones from you, right? Versus another company which says, I want 10 drones from you. Right? Once the company places the order for 1,000, IdeaForge can go back to its suppliers and say, I need, so many parts. Because I'm giving you so much order, give me discount. So they are able to get this economies of scale. They're able to source this better, they can get better timelines and at a lower cost. So that's what is called economies of scale. It is one of the 5 ways classically known to give you defensibility. So if you go back and read defensibility. So if you look at Berkshire Hathaway, क्या नाम है उसका? That guy who the Warren Buffett, yes. Warren Buffett, he's the one who said initially that I want to invest in companies that have large moats, and by moats he meant one of these things, right? So, yeah.
Economy of scale is going to what the cost certainly, but
Yes.
in terms of efficiency, so it is going to decrease or increase the efficiency, or efficiency completely separate thing from the economy of scale?
Okay, so the question is, does economy of scale only reduce cost, or does it have impact on efficiency also? Correct. So definitely, cost though is obvious, right? It will help you reduce cost, which is why you have buying clubs and all of that, right? You go to anyway, forget that. Does it help increase efficiency? In this example, no, this is not a good example. Airlines is not a good example. It's doing the reverse. By reducing the stuff they're carrying, they're increasing the efficiency. No, it depends. Efficiency, if we define efficiency to be correlated to performance provided by your products, then unlikely that you will be able to get better efficiency. Because performance of the product depends on how you have engineered it to be. Right? So you can at best reduce the cost of that and make it more effectively cheaper, but I don't think it can increase the effectiveness or efficiency of the. I can't think of anything right now, but if anyone can, please let us know. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Sorry. You okay? Yeah. All right. Yes.
So why bundle in the first place?
Why bundle? I'll come to the next slide. Yes, because bundling, unbundling are only 2 ways to make money. So it is. I think you know the answer already, but I'll come to that in a second. All right. Okay. The question was why bundle in the first place? Just repeating, and I think we'll talk about it next slide. But before that, I'll ask one more question. People know what this is? Which company is this? Microsoft, right? So clearly. And if you look at it, there are hundreds of companies out there which are taking one part of this Microsoft product suite, Office suite, and building point solution, best of breed solutions, so that they can actually give more value to customers. Anyone knows what these 4 logos stand for? First one, okay, first one forget. Second one, Zoom. We are all on Zoom. Third one, Slack. Okay. Last one, Notion. Right. It's. No, first one is not Freshworks. Huh? Hat table though. It looks like hat also, but yeah. Airtable. Yes. Thank you. It is actually just a spreadsheet company. So first one is Airtable, which is a spreadsheet company, worth I think 20 billion or so, like more than 10 billion for sure. So just one bit of what Office does. Office obviously, Microsoft obviously $1 trillion company, so it's okay. I don't think they get. Okay, so question was why do bundling in the first place? And I think you guys know this. Taco Bell, right? Any place, most people go for combo offers, right? Because it is good for you, as in it's cheaper for you if you're going to eat. I mean, 3 of you go and you can eat all of this. If you buy it separately, it's going to cost more as a customer. Why is it good for the seller? Because by giving you a little bit incentive, they're actually increasing the average order value. How much are you purchasing from them? That goes up with this incentive. Because they have fixed cost. So now they're saying, okay, I have fixed cost. I have my restaurant already. I'm paying this much fee or rent for that. I have so many people, blah, blah, blah. All of that are fixed cost. Now, how do I maximize my, sales? And sale per square feet, that's the metric typically restaurants use. So they therefore come up with these strategies to say, let me bundle things together so that people can buy more. Right? So that's basically how it is. Yeah. Okay. Little more subtler example, but and little tougher to read. So I'll read out to you. So at the bottom is the coffee beans. Right? You can buy coffee beans, grind it yourself, make good coffee decoction. You'll be very happy. But a lot of people will say, nah, too much work, I don't want to do it. You can go buy Nescafe or any of the brands that you like, So you can call it bundling, you can call it processing, whatever you want to call it. But at the top right is, a Starbucks, Cafe Coffee Day, all those, barista, whatever you want to call it. Those guys are saying, no, I'm not just giving you coffee, I'm giving you experience. Right? I'm giving you an environment where you can come, sit for an hour, 2 hours, do your work. It's as part of the deal, right? So you're bundling, you're giving coffee, but you're giving them an environment. You're bundling something else. Some are giving you free Wi-Fi also, saying, come work here, right? So that's what bundling does. It gets more money from customers, and which is why lots and lots of companies do that, right? So yes.
Is it fair to say in this example,
Yeah.
all the products that are being bundled are owned by the restaurant, so it works out. But in the case of the airline, the food comes from somewhere else, I guess. So
Okay, so the question is, does bundling works only when the sub-products bundled together are owned by the same company? And answer is clearly not necessary. In this case also, the bandwidth that the Starbucks or whatever is giving you is not done by them. They're paying to someone else, but they're paying a fixed cost on that. So anytime you can take a fixed cost and chop it up into variable cost and increase that, I think you can benefit. Right? So you don't have to own every bit of it. You just need to have a fixed cost on that, right? And then you are good to go.
Like in this example, Taco doesn't hold Pepsi, but still they are giving in their
Taco Bell, Pepsi are parent-child relationship, at least I thought. Okay, the question was, but anyway, it's not even, but okay. Okay. Chalo bhai. अभी तक तो चल रहा था. Oh. Good, you came back. It was missing you. All right, so then the question is, okay, these are consumer examples. Let's talk about real examples which are kind of closer to what we want to build, right? So here's an example, bottom left, HDFC Bank, right? Using bank as an example because they aggregate a lot of service. They have bundled a lot of services. So when a company comes, like a PhonePe, right? Anyone knows what did PhonePe unbundle? From HDFC, what did PhonePe unbundle? Transactions. Online. So actually what they unbundled was payments, right? So if transactions is the right word, but basically payment. If you open PhonePe today, it has everything, right? It has rebundled everything into it. So they started very successfully, came up to $10 billion valuation with a single product primarily, which is payments. They are the largest payment processor, UPI payments company in India, larger than Google Pay and everyone. But over time, you start rebundling things back again, right? So that's, they rebundle, for example, the investment part of this, which by doing, you can do your own return calculations, you can do investments through PhonePe. They have rebundled loans, right, which is this part of it, borrow, right? They have rebundled insurance, this one, right? So everything is getting slowly rebundled. Of course, they have not rebundled save, because for that you need a RBI license, right? So you can't really do save, but everything else, payment, investment, borrow, insure, has been rebundled back into PhonePe. So that's classically what happens, and that's what we want to look at it, right? So this is just to highlight, the core part of that is still this. If you look at it, their app, when you open, the first thing is always transfers. That's their DNA. That's where they started from, but they have now rebundled a lot of things around it, right? So that's basically. Okay, so that was a software company. Okay, question, yes. Previous slide, yes.
So like this is such a big company.
Yes.
Go to the website, it's very much cluttered.
Yes.
We have hard time finding what they're looking for.
Uh-huh.
What objective they are trying to come up with by having such a cluttered app and offering, showing all the services that are offering based on.
Yeah, okay. So the question is, why do people bundle? Because bundling always increases the complexity of the product and therefore makes it tougher for customers to use the product well, right? But you know, before we answer that, look at the PhonePe. Is it less cluttered or as cluttered? It is less cluttered because it's a design issue, but in terms of the capabilities provided by PhonePe are the same. Therefore, answer has to be, you know, something that cuts across. It's not a HDFC specific answer, it's industry specific answer, which is revenue per user eventually is the metric, because there are only so many customers that are out there. So once you acquire a customer, you want to maximize the money you make from them. So how do you maximize money that you make from a given customer? You offer them more services. So if HDFC gets you for a saving banks account, then they ask themselves, what else can I give this customer so that I can make a little bit more money in return? And which is what prompts them to do more and more things, which is what prompts PhonePe to do more and more things. It is revenue per customer, ARPU, average revenue per user. ARPU is a very common term. So ARPU is what people are looking for. So you want to basically maximize ARPU. And that's why people rebundle. Yes?
So Amazon's have different sellers on the page.
Yes.
Different entities.
Yeah.
But if I'm looking for something, at the end of the page I will find that you can bundle this together and buy this particular price.
Correct.
So they're bundling from different sellers. Like
Yes.
And they reduce the cost of the individual thing.
Correct.
So how is this getting profit from the seller?
How is it making profit? Okay. So the question is Amazon, if you go to Amazon and you want to buy one thing, at the bottom they often says, people who bought this often bought it with this, right? And they give you two more options and they give you a slightly lower price of a bundle, right? Which is what Taco Bell also did, right? So they basically, but your question is, because these products are from different sellers, how is Amazon benefiting from all of this, right? And what's happening to the sellers? So what happens is, in this case, sellers have given certain price to Amazon, saying, I want to, you know, buy, or I want to sell it at this price, right? On top of it, Amazon adds its own overheads and sells the, you know, products at certain price. At times, Amazon is willing to take a hit on its margin and sell a little bit more, because the revenue they make, what's called GMV, gross merchandise value, is, you know, if that goes up, then it is, well, economies of scale kick in. They can buy more things at lower cost. So it is, if they're not making money from you, then they're reducing cost from somewhere else. So that's the maths they do in their whatever Excels or whatever software they use to figure out what is the right price point that they can maximize their, you know, margin structure, so to say. So sometimes you are benefiting as an end customer. They are on the face of it taking a hit on their margin, but at the background maybe they're getting a lower cost because they're selling more of something else. So it's that math that eventually, so it's a business model decision.
They buy at a fixed price from the sellers.
Sorry?
They buy at a fixed price from the sellers.
They might even negotiate a lower price if they sell more than 1,000 books or 1,000 microwaves. They might actually get that microwave at lower cost, and therefore they can make more money. They might still sell it to you for 13,000 rupees, but instead of buying it at 10,000, they might buy at 9,000, right? But to you, they might say, I'll sell it for 12,500. So they're making 500 even after all of that, right? So that's the math that goes on in the background. Yeah.
So when we started the story of bundling and bundling,
Say that again, sorry.
when we started the story of bundling and bundling,
Yes.
let's say, and then we move on to the next slide. It's all B2C now.
Yeah.
What's your perspective?
B2B, I'm coming, that's where I was going. But next slide is B2B, Grey Orange, robotics company, yes. Question was about robot, yeah, does it apply to?
I'll wait for this later. Because
Next slide,
the
okay.
question was also on hardware
Yes. Okay, here you go. So the question obviously becomes, okay, this is all good, but does it actually work for deep tech companies also? Does this unbundling, bundling business work for deep tech companies also? And the assertion is yes, it is a necessity for every startup. It's not an option, it's a necessity, right? Here's an example. I'll have one more example, which is way more detailed, but this is an introduction example. Second one is a detailed example, right? So this is, Grey Orange is actually the largest deep tech startup success story out of India. It's actually, maybe not, maybe Tejas is, but I don't know. One of the successful companies, started by two guys out of BITS, Pilani, valued at $1.5 plus billion in the last round, which is around 2-3 years back, right? So actually, reasonably successful company. If you look at their start, how did they get started, right? First and foremost, the Akash and Samay, when they were at BITS, they participated in a lot of robotics hackathons, right? And they won a few. They got excited, saying this is what we want to do, right? Now, when they started thinking, okay, what startup should we build? They quickly found 3 areas that they thought are interesting: oil and gas, supply chain management, and railway track maintenance. I'm sure people here will also be thinking, in robotics, people will be thinking, at least some of these, right? So that's what they found. What they found was, actually first they said, let's look at oil and gas because that seems like the largest option, right? And quickly they found out actually oil and gas is not that clean as a business, right? There are some underhand dealings. You have to basically, it's not, you can't just do a normal business there. So they said, okay, we're not going to do that, right? So they backed out of that. Then they started saying, okay, let's look at supply chain management, right? So that's where we started doing. This is 2012 to 13, like 12 years back. Right? At that time, if you remember, I don't know if you remember or not, but that is the time when the e-commerce was beginning to pick up in India. 2013 is when I think Flipkart raised $100 million. For the first time, any Indian startup had raised more than $100 million. So what Flipkart was actually trying to do was actually streamline its supply chain, right? And what Grey Orange did was to go and understand what the supply chain really corresponds to, right? I don't know if you guys have spent time, but there are, for us, what it looks like, we place an order on the website and someone comes and delivers the packet, whatever we ordered, right? What happens is when you place an order, it goes into, it's a fulfilled management system, it goes there. That goes into a warehouse where all the products are then, if let's say order 3 things, they get put in a package. Then that gets sent to one place called sortation center, where they say, okay, this product needs to go to Noida, this needs to go to Lucknow, this needs to come to Bangalore, right? So they are sorting these things. So that's your sortation centers. Then it comes to Bangalore, and within Bangalore, then say, oh, this guy, there are packages now, some for Malleshwaram, some for Rajajinagar, and some for Belandur, where I live. But so that's a delivery center. So there are many steps, right? And Grey Orange said, we will not do this, we will only do one, which is sortation system, right? Because the first one, where products are put into packages, requires picking and placing packages, which is still a problem that is being solved. In robotics, people have not solved it yet, right? Sortation center is taking a package and putting in the right, area, right? Which is different, going to different cities, right? That's a simpler problem. So that's the only problem they worked on, and that's what they did. So that's a single unbundling activity as far as Grey Orange is concerned. Right? Now, like I said, Flipkart was at that time growing. They came up with this brilliant idea saying we should have Big Billion Day, which is 3 weeks before Diwali, because that's when a lot of people buy things. Now they were expecting a lot of orders, so they wanted to streamline it, so they gave an order to Grey Orange. In fact, they invested money in Grey Orange, saying, please take our money, build this product because we need this, right? Which is what helped Grey Orange to grow from 4 to 40 robotic, whatever the moving things like Kiva systems. If you have, Amazon was one of the first to do it. Actually, roughly the same time. 2013 is when Kiva also got started. So Grey Orange also got started at the same time. So, right. And after they successfully did this, that's when they started getting more and more customers. That's when they signed up with Jabong, Delivery. Now, if you look at it, almost every large logistic company is a customer of Grey Orange, right? So that's how unbundling single activity, single sharp focus is very important even for deep tech startups, right? You had a question or question got answered? Did they rebundle? Yes, of course they did rebundle. If someone picks up that Grey Orange as a case study, I love them to tell us all about it. Yes?
Follow-up thing, sir. Like this is still a services-oriented model. Like they are offering a service to a business player.
Okay.
Now say if someone has to rebundle after unbundling.
Yes.
For a product-oriented company. Typically for a big tech startup, if you go to manufacturing, materials, that sort of thing, it will increase their cost like anything, right? Like I cannot start manufacturing a gear and earlier I was manufacturing, say, a driver.
Right.
To start making a gear, I have to make a lot of investment on it. So that previous slide that you showed,
yeah.
whether it is valid for all sectors, like especially the second half of it, like the rebundling.
Got it. Okay. So the question is, does rebundling apply to deep tech startups or not? Given that deep tech startups have to invest, basically build products, so they have to build assembly lines. Right. Yeah. So first of all, Grey Orange is not a services company. Grey Orange builds its own robots. The robots that move around and take the shells and take it to different places is built by Grey Orange. So it's a hardware company. It's not a software company. So therefore, in some sense, you have an example right in front of you saying that deep tech companies also can benefit from unbundling, right? Then the next question becomes, okay, can they rebundle more things on top of it, right? Now rebundling can be of two types. One of the type which was of the Taco Bell, which is 5 things you put and you sell to your customer. Second rebundling was of the Starbucks type, which the core product is still the same, but you have added other services around it, right? So clearly you can see that services layering can be done, right? So for example, Pixel, the hyper spectral imaging company, yesterday I think launched their Fireflies rockets, satellites. So the satellites are beaming back the images, hyperspectral images. Now you can sell the raw images to your customers, or you can start building machine learning models, extract knowledge, information from it and sell to your thing. Now that is a example of rebundling, right? So you can say my core skill is to build satellites and launch them, or actually just build satellites. It's getting launched by SpaceX, so you're not even taking credit for that. But I'm building these first in world satellites. So your core skills is that, but you can rebundle other things around. The first part of the question, can you rebundle more products into it? It's more, involved question. You will see answers to that. You should over time.
Rebundling is always the next logical step.
Rebundling is always the next logical step. This is the answer to your question. But yeah, I'll let someone ask the question. The question is rebundling always the next logical step? And I think answer is on this sheet. But I'll first answer one more question or 2 more questions, whatever. Yes, go ahead, please.
So, with the example of Grey Orange,
yes.
which is not the company that is bundling everything together, and in the slide where you put the coffee in the Starbucks.
Yeah.
We can go back there. So, would an ideal startup, like, how do you choose where you want to play here? Because
how do you pick what?
How do you choose where do you want to play this?
Yes.
Like AI, everyone is doing the company.
Yeah.
There's huge investment going there. In this case, Starbucks is making the maximum profit.
Yes, I will answer that question. In fact, that's a very important, okay, the question is how do you pick the right place? What do you unbundle and what do you unfocus on right at the start? How do you figure it out? And I think that's one of the most important questions, exactly what we are going next. So, and that's the last thing for today's topic, but we'll definitely, in a minute, we'll go there. Any other questions? No? All right. Okay, but before this, So the question is rebundling always the next step? And this is the answer to that. And this is not my slide, this is someone else. In the notes, you will see the source. So if you are a new tech and you are one of the leaders in the tech, you're one of the first one coming up, and your buyers are optimizing for quality, which most of the time you will find some customers which are called early adopters, then you have to do unbundling. Right? As the market matures, as more and more people get used to this idea, and everyone is now competing with you building similar products, that's the time you need to get back to bundling, right? Which is, you are now late deployment, as in your company has now been at it for last 5, 7, 10 years, right? And your customers have changed because they have understood the value of the new technology. They are now trying to reduce cost, right? That's when the rebundling or bundling becomes the way to build companies. Typically, startups don't get built there. Typically, startups get built in the bottom right corner. Top left is where the large companies operate. So if you already are there, you have become large, then you will basically succeed there. But you cannot start in the top left, because that's where a large company with lots of resources will always beat you. Right? So, all right, so let's get to the next part. And before that, I'll ask this one question so that people are, oh yeah.
So in early tech startups, you said that we can go to buyers optimize for cost. Like, which kind of buyers are we looking at over here?
Which buyers are optimizing for cost? So if you, again, we'll talk about it later in the course, but if you take buyers and you split them into different segments, popularly they're known as early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. Early majority has a small set of people called innovators, right? But forget that. Early majority are the people who are willing to pay for quality. So they always buy best in breed products because they are technically savvy, they are technically optimistic, whatever you want to call it, but they are early adopters. They take your product and they say, okay, it's fine, it's not fully polished, but I'll use it, right? So that's what you want at that point. Early majority has some elements of that, but late majority wants a bundle product. They say, yeah, don't tell me all this. Even they find the smart TV is tough because you have to pick one HDMI for TV, another for Netflix, another for YouTube. Too many clicks. So make it easy for me so that I can consume my thing. So the rebundling happens typically for late majority customers. But if you take the whole market, typically 50% is in the early majority, early adopters, early majority, and 50% is the late majority, late in laggards. So that's the answer.
So we can say that OnePlus is an example of new tech in early deployment and buyers optimize for cost.
Say that?
The case of OnePlus.
OnePlus.
It was competing with Apple.
No, OnePlus is not a question of early adopters versus early majority. OnePlus example of OnePlus versus Apple is example of a premium product company and a mass market company. OnePlus key appeal is that I have packaged so many features for you, and they are best in class. They're better than what Apple phone gives you, right? So I have more than them. I have better cameras, blah blah blah, whatever else, right? But the late majority thinks that this is too complicated. There are too many issues. The Apple UI is easier to use, right? So that's the kind of thing. So unfortunate, but Apple not always was in the late majority segment, but for phones it has definitely moved to that now. Right, so Google Pixel, for example, wants to take a position of early majority or early adopters, right? So I should have repeated the question, but next time, okay. Anyone else? No? All right, let's get to this. Okay, which place is this? Anyone knows? People who know, yeah, you. No, not Rome. Huh? Athens, yes. Yeah, so that's where the Acropolis is. Anyone knows what's in the background? Where those ships? Which port is that? Famous port. India used to trade with them long back, 2,000 years back. Sorry? मेसोपोटामिया कहाँ है यार? वो तो इराक में है. ये different continent. No, not Mesopotamia. It's called Prius port. It's the port, Athens port. I mean, but Anyway, okay, so last part of this is the question, okay, how do we unbundle, right? The most important question, if unbundling is a necessity, how do we do it, right? I'll use this example. There's a company called Tan90. Anyone heard of Tan90? No? Okay, it's IIT Madras, 3 PhD students, Somalya, Shiv and Rajni. They were working with Professor Satyanarayana Sheshadri, and KV Anand is a mentor. He's based in Canada, Toronto, but was key, contributor to this. So what they came up with while they were working on PhD, they came up with a new phase change material that is more energy efficient, right? Plus, it does not allow the biofilms, as is it doesn't allow the bacteria and fungus or other things to grow on it. Right? So basically, it's a good material which can hold the temperature for longer, right? So then the question becomes, okay, what do we do with it, right? So one possible product was, let's build a portable cold storage, right? Which you can see on the right hand side. So what they said was, this phase material can actually go below 0 degrees, so -4, -8, whatever is needed to keep an ice cream frozen. It does that. If you order ice cream on Zomato, for example, when it comes, it's slightly melted, right? You know why it is slightly melted? Because they put ice, those packs, right? And ice packs can only take the temperature to 0 degree. It cannot take it below 0. And ice cream melts at 0. It needs -4 to be solid, right? So these guys have a material that can go up to that and keep ice cream solid, right? So that's basically where, roughly speaking, and it can hold the temperature for longer. So that's the technology. So when they started looking at saying, okay, now we have technology, now what do we do with it, right? And a lot of technical founders face this challenge. And as creative people, we can quickly find out there are many, many users, right? So for example, subset of examples that Tan90 identified was, they could go after farmers or the farmer to retail part of the value chain, right? And specifically people who are selling fruits and vegetables, because you get the vegetables in the morning and you will deliver at 7 p.m. So in those 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. it might wilt, so you need to keep it fresh. It can spoil also, right? Spoilage. Okay. Second is, you can take milk, same thing, right? Take the milk from farmer, take it from the farmer to the co-op, to the Nandini place where they will, sterilize it, and it's called, not sterilize, whatever it's called. That's the milk. Third one is the example I gave, which is ice creams, right? Or actually, fourth one is the ice creams. The third one is basically dairy products and meats, right? So you want to get it from retailer to customer. So different part of value chain, right? So third and fourth are different part of value chain. And the bottom three, and that's why they're in different colors, are going after the offices. And you can take the same solution and start saying that, I can actually make it available for mobile base stations, because they have, they have the compute there, they have some, for that they need to maintain temperature. Even ATMs have that requirement. So you can take it to all of them and you can give low capacity cooling for that. Right? So you still have a AC, but you will have this as a paint on the wall so that the room will maintain the temperature for longer, right? So that's a rough application of the idea. Offices, data centers, and so on and so forth. So there are many, many possibilities. So as I'm sure you can think what next will come, right? You will start analyzing, say, okay, what do we do, right? Anyone wants to take a stab? What, if you were Tan90 founding team, what would you do? You will do data centers? Why would you do data centers?
The cooling requirement for data centers is substantially high.
Correct.
And power consumption will also reduce.
Correct. So data centers have, right now we are limited by the electricity that's available in the world, right? All our Gen AI is limited by that. So data centers are consuming generating lots of heat, and therefore there's a lots of need to cool it. And it's one of the fastest growing sectors. So that's a good possibility. Anyone else has a different thought?
The first two, farmers to retailers or farmers.
Why would you do that?
Like, in my opinion, the third and fourth one are already, there is many players are there already offering.
Tan90 started 4 years back, 5 years back. But as of today, you will go after first or second. You will go after farmers to the retailer sector, okay? because it's underserved, because there are not enough competitors in the place. Okay, that's another way of looking at it. Yep.
So logically, we should go for a product which degrades fast.
Okay, what's the tell?
Ice cream is the one which degrades the fastest.
Ah, okay, that way degrades. Okay, okay. So ice cream cannot be delivered if there were not this product available. Yes, fair enough.
Then milk, dairy products, and maybe fruits.
All right, cool. So three different perspectives. Everything has been covered. So we'll move to the next slide. What and tell you what they did actually. Yes.
We can also use it to transfer blood, like blood samples to different places.
No, there are many. Okay, there are many more possibilities. So I'm just giving you an illustration of how you will think about it for your own startup, right? So what needs to be done to do it in a systematic way is to basically, if you want to do it for your own startup, first and foremost, go back and start thinking about all the possible use cases, right? So you basically enumerate all of them, right? Now we have to look at them, like I said, to make it quantitative, we have to look at from input and output perspective, right? Now, as I mentioned, input corresponds to effort, including money that people invest in the activity, and output corresponds to benefits that you derive, right? For consumer products, right? So for consumer products, again, I made this assertion, I'm making it again. Next slide will tell you why this is. But for consumer products, the input is proportional to frequency, right? Because higher frequency requires more effort, right? That's basically, you can kind of see, more often you take taxi, the more often you have to, book the taxi and walk to the place. So it's more correlation. Output depends on the importance of the activity. Actually, let me get to the next slide. It just makes it easier. Okay, so let's do this exercise together. On the x-axis is basically, activities divided by frequency of the activity. How frequently a typical user do. You might be an outlier, then please put yourself in a typical user bucket. And on the y-axis is how important is that activity, right? So lower importance of activity is if once in a while things don't go as you expect them, it's okay. If that, let's say cab doesn't come on the right time, it's okay. You might get delayed for the meeting, but if you have kept enough buffer, you would still make it, right? So you'll grumble, but it's okay. Top left, if you are having a heart attack and you can't get to or hospital cannot treat you well, that's more severe, right? So that's high importance, happens thankfully less frequently, but very important when it happens, right? So that's basically high importance. High importance has high repercussions, low importance has low repercussions, right? So that's basically, okay. Bottom left most, I'll tell you what that is, that's buying books. Where do you want to place it? Sorry? Lower importance, medium frequency, okay? Roughly most people are agreeing. I will just, as a marker, put it here, right? So that you can now think of things relative to this. Books, let's say, are bought once in what? Once a week? Nahin yaar. 2.1 is average number of purchases on Flipkart per year. Average customer buys 2.1 times on average so 6 months is when they buy. That's 4 or 5 years old data, so it's not today's data. But best case is once a quarter. Books, I don't know. I mean, all the studious people might be buying it more often, but normal people are buying once in 2-3 months, right? So, but with that as a marker, tell me this one. Okay, I'll put one more marker. This is fashion, buying clothes. Happens more frequently than books, typically, not for everyone. It is more important than books, right? I mean, most people will agree to it. Some will not agree. So I'm saying treat it as average, right? So next one, household products. Higher frequency, lower importance, higher importance. No, relative to these. Less or more than this. Now medium cannot be. Relative to this, is it more or less? More. Household goods are more important than buying fashion products? No one will agree with that. Household goods are,
Hand washes, sanitizers, and that are
commodity.
It is
Your t-shirt that you're wearing is more important than how you cleaned your soap hands with your soap.
high frequency than
Higher frequency, yes. So it should have been on the right. But importance is lower, right? So that's, okay. Oops, I should not have. Okay, buying appliances, including, let's say, mobile phones, all appliances put together. Lower frequency.
Yeah.
Perfect. Right? You get the idea. So I'll not now spend more time. Basically, you can take any consumer activity people are doing and put them on this 2x2, right? And you can start seeing that there are different, and you might not agree with all of them. That's perfectly fine, because that's where the founder's perspective is very important. You might think, oh, my customer is a customer who buys fashion products every week, and I am building a product for them. Therefore, I build something different. Perfectly right. You can build a new product, and But typically, these are how things stack up. Right? Now, interesting thing is, if you see, there is typically a different product kind that gets built for different frequency. Flipkart, Amazon cannot do real estate purchase or sale and car purchase or sale. There are different Swiggy's and Spinny, Car Dekho, other companies which are only doing that. Right? There are specific companies which are only doing bottom right, which is now called quick commerce. Right? So there are different characteristics of different products. Right? Now this is okay. The question is, but what about the consumer products? Right? So I'm going to use this example to highlight. Anyone knows what this is? Obviously you know what this is. Right? This is airlines. Right? Frequency of pilots and frequency of ground staff, they do this day in, day out. Every day they're doing it. Right? So frequency loses its relevance when you look at business use cases. Right? So therefore we need to look at something else. Right? This example, what is bottom left? Tesla. Bottom right, the batteries. How much do you think is spent on batteries? How much of the cars cost? 60%? No, 40%. Roughly 40% of cost is in a EV battery, is in the battery. In a electric car is battery. Do you know who's the largest supplier of battery to? No, not BYD. Good guess, but BYD is the largest car seller now, EV seller now. So, and they are a supplier to Tesla. Actually, they are. Who's the largest seller? No one knows, right? Sorry, who? China is the biggest producer, but I'm asking of one particular company which is the biggest. It's not even Chinese company actually. Panasonic. Panasonic was the largest supplier to Tesla. Actually Tesla bought out Panasonic's that part for $3.6 billion. Right? But no one knows about it. The valuation of the company, Tesla versus valuation of Panasonic, $3.6 billion, there's a large difference. Why is the difference? Why do we know so much about Tesla but not know much about Panasonic, although it's 40-50% of the cost? Sorry? Nah, that's brand value. Sorry? Importance to the general audience, exactly. Importance to the general audience can be made more specific by saying who is collecting money from customers. We are paying money to Tesla. Tesla is paying money to Panasonic. So we care about Tesla, or take Indian examples, right? We care about the manufacturer, OEM, and not the suppliers of that. So that's basically, so where is the money flow? And that's what we will look at as two parameters. So on this axis, the most importance is how close to money are you? If there's a direct ROI with the money, then you are building, your product that you're building is going to be very valuable in people's mind. If you're making less, if there's no correlation or there's cost savings, then you're here, right? That's basically. On the y-axis, how much money is being invested. On pilots, airlines are putting in more money, so they are important. On ground staff, they're paying less money, so they're less important, right? So there's a different, so frequency is not important, but that is, right? How much money, right? So now let's look at it 1090. So first two examples, again, you might or might not agree, but roughly speaking, this is where it maps it. So farmers to retailers, farmers to milk operators, vegetables and milk roughly fall here when we look from this lens, right? These two, where do you think they go? Sorry? First row, yeah. So they go here, first and second row, right? And ice cream comes on the top, right? And below that, yeah. Roughly speaking, I think if you agree, we are good. If you don't agree at all, then please tell. Right? And the last bit, these three, where do they go? Sorry, bottom, top, right column? Top right? No, they don't. They come in the bottom because there is no correlation to the revenue. So the cooling, if you improve the cooling of this room, the cost, ISC is going to save money. We are not going to learn better, right? You're not going to pay more fees to to ISC, right? So very crudely speaking. So they are on the cost side. So there is no correlation with the revenue that the end company is producing. So although that's very important, it's not to say it will not be bought, that product will be bought, but it will be bought from the lens of cost. Is it going to save me money, right? Versus here, which I think you rightly pointed out, the product degrades very fast, which is without this product, they cannot deliver ice cream to you, right? And that's why ice cream is on top right. So that's basically the difference. But yeah, go ahead.
The money invested is from the business customer, how much they invested that
It's
all from our side.
so the question is money invested from the business customer, which is the buyer, or from the company that's building it? Answer is from the company that's building it. Right? So you have to look at, if you are the company who's doing it, how much money are you going to spend on this thing? Right? So
Why would more money be spent on the retailer to customer? It's a smaller product compared to like layering a whole data center or something.
okay, so the question is, why is money, whatever these retailer to customer things in the right column and not in the left two columns, right? The answer is, if you look at the value chain of a farm to, what's it called? Farm to fork, right? So cutting it on the, getting the vegetables on the farm, processing it, getting it to the warehouse, and then getting it to your house. Typically, more money is spent on the delivery logistics part of this side. If you look at any company, there's always more money on that because you want your food to be delivered in 10 minutes. There you can take 7 hours to get the thing. So there's more leeway that you have. So therefore the things are on the right. Okay, we are already out of time, so we need to, this is the concluding thing, which is, if you look at any company, unbundling, picking a single activity is always the case. If you peel the layers and you figure out what really there is, how did it get started, you will always find a single use case. And my, therefore, claim is that all of you, when you start thinking about you're doing startups, for the students especially, because you will pick one startup to do, you will have to pick one use case, right? And for the startups that are already part of ARTPARK, I would want you to go back and look at, is there a use case that fits better in this dimension? And typically you want things on the top right? Because, or at least you're on the top row. Because when people have, your customers have a direct revenue proximity, they can attribute revenue back to you, they're willing to pay you more. Right? So that's basically, you make a more profitable company. Okay, since we are out of time, I will just conclude with this. Actually, I'll skip this also, I'll just say this part. Okay, this is going to be the course structure, which I already mentioned last time for the students, but for the ARTPARK people. What we did today was this part. The next few sessions are all blue. Blue, as you remember, was team strategy. So what we'll do now is, from now, get into the team strategy, into the startup strategy. Talk about how you can come up with the best strategy. Once we have that, we'll talk about the team. How can you build teams? Most ARTPARK teams have already teams. I mean, ARTPARK startups already have teams. So the more important question there is, how can you have your equity distribution done well, and how can you have ESOPs, which are stock options, so you can attract good talent, right? So that's the thing we'll talk. And the last two is when we start talking about capital. How do you raise, and what can you do to improve the probability of raising funding? Right? So that's basically the course structure, and that's pretty much it. I'm not going to talk about this rebundling, although if you cross product market fit threshold, then this becomes important. But most teams or most startups are not there. It's all there in in a book that I've written. I'll give you the link of this. But for ARTPARK team specifically, one slide which is not applicable to students because I think is more applicable to startups. What you'll find here is not going to answer every question that you have because I'm following this principle. Anyone knows what the left side is? Paddy field. On the right side? Blow up of that right side. Sorry? Drip water irrigation. So this is, Israel came up with this. Drip water irrigation for paddy gives you much better yield. So following that principle, what I'm not going to do is give you lots of information. So for the startups, ARTPARK startups, if you have questions, you have to come ask the question. Minimum information will be given so that you don't die, roughly speaking. But for students, basically to keep it easy. But for startups, you will need more information, so please come and ask. Right? I'll be happy to answer those questions. Right? So that's basically what this is. This is the last slide. If you get too curious, saying, okay, where is this going? Where is this story going? You can actually look up this link, and you will find a book written by me, not yet published. So please feel free to use it. If you find, for students, if you find a mistake there, you get 5 credits, 5 free points. So let me know if there's a, not grammatical mistake, a real mistake. So a real mistake, logical mistake, 5 points for that. So that's the conclusion. All right, any other last questions? Anyone has parting questions or remarks? Yes, will the slides be shared? Yes, everything will be uploaded, and they will also be shared by whatever group we have created. For ARTPARK teams, yes. For students, yes. Yes. Anything else? Yeah. Yes. Say it louder.
Proximity and correlation.
Yeah.
Those are two different things, right? So in your business model, you correlate your revenues to how much the users
Correct.
has usage.
Yes.
So in that case, you are correlated, but then you are very close to the proximity and not able to get the difference.
So you're saying why is the revenue proximity correlated with?
No. These are two different parameters.
Which ones?
Proximity and correlation.
Proximity and correlation.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. So your question is why is y-axis making sense? Roughly speaking, right? So y-axis is basically, the way I would say is, look at it from a revenue point of view. So you are in a certain category, sector. Look at the revenue flows in that sector, right? The closer you are to the revenue, the more value your company will gain, right? The further away you move, if you one hop away, then you lose some value. If you have no correlation, so you're away from the revenue completely, then you get less value. Example of that is, let's look at booking.com and TripAdvisor. Right? So you use TripAdvisor to find the best hotel because they have very good reviews, right? And you then use booking.com to book the hotel. Right? If you look at it, there are hundreds of players out there. Booking.com, Make My Trip, Agoda, Clear Trip, there are hundreds of possibilities where you can book your hotel. There's only one company that gives you actually there are few, Holiday IQ being another one. There are very few companies that give you very good reviews of the hotels. Right? So at one angle you will say, okay, who's creating more value? Right? So one answer could be, it is TripAdvisor because they have unique content, no one else has it. Right? And in fact the other one is commoditized. Anyone can actually build a booking engine on top of Sabre and other OTAs. Right? But if you look at the market valuation, what is booking.com versus TripAdvisor valuation is? Anyone wants to take a guess? No? Booking.com is valued around $90 billion. TripAdvisor is roughly $9 billion or $6 billion. So there's a 10x multiple. Although you can argue that TripAdvisor has created more value and it is better defensible product than anyone else out there. But it is a revenue proximity. You're paying money to Booking, they are paying money to TripAdvisor. Right? So that's where the indirectness kicks in and you lose out. So if you have a choice, if you have an option, then I would say always go as close to the money as possible if you're building a startup. So there's a 10x loss every hop, right? Because as a company, I cannot pay more than 10% of my revenues to my supplier, right? And if you're a supplier to that, then that will pay 1/10 of that. So 1/100th of what customer is paying will come to the second hop guy. So proximity to revenue is very, very important. So that's why, that's the logic of having the y-axis. This is a cost side. Cost side companies have very, they are successful cost side companies, but it is tougher to get started because you have to convince people. They will ask you to do pilots. They will measure how much money are they saving. Is the new process worth the effort for the new savings that they're going to get? They'll get into all that math. So it's just tougher. Yeah? All right.
There's another question.
There's a question.
Okay.
We are building robotic systems for driveways today. We use deep learning for material identification and robot for storing waste. Currently, before developing a commercial robot, we are looking to unbundle the software product to get more revenue and establish ourselves. Do you think this is a good strategy?
Whoa, that's a tough question. I don't even know. So the question, if I understood right, is should we unbundle software subset of that and use that to monetize? Is that?
So they are developing
It's a long question. 1 second, I'll just take it. Okay, let me read it out so that everyone can see. So we're building a robotic systems, but before building the robotic systems, we're looking to unbundle the software product to go get more revenue and establish ourselves. Okay, so it's basically the question is, should we use something else, which is a shallower product, to start generating revenues and then build the real product that you want to do? And if I understood it right, if not, if I didn't get it right, please send me email. But whatever I understood, the way I'll answer that is, as a startup, it is always important to solve the toughest problem first. So if you are thinking about saying, within this robotic system they're building, if the software is the toughest problem, definitely do it first. But if it is something only to make money, then I would say actually first solve the toughest problem, because the uniqueness that your differentiated product that you're going to build is going to come from there. Right? So that's how I would look at it. So I would say no, don't do that. There's never a yes and no answer in startup world. So I would say prefer not to do that, because sometimes it is important to get money, revenues, which then help you to build the products. So if there are certain corner cases, unique scenarios, that's a different matter. But typically, solve the toughest problem, get that sorted out. That will give you the core on which you can build other products. So that's how I would answer. All right, so with that, we'll finish today. We did not have time today for the students to get teams and to talk about that. What I'll do it, maybe schedule a session sometime next week so that maybe we can talk about it separately. But I will request students to just reach out to others. We need teams of 3 or 4, minimum 3, ideally 4. And if there are students who are dropping off and they're dropping off, please feel free to merge, reach out to other people, build the teams that you want to. Right? But I don't want only the friends to work together, because that is not, I want you to get the experience of working with strangers. So, okay. So whatever teams you propose, I might say no to it. So please be careful. All right, that's it. Thank you very much.